All right, thank you very much, Taylor. Appreciate that and appreciate the help. Next slide. So this is our first slide, but I wanted to first introduce my colleague with the School Energy Coalition, Nancy Chavez Espinosa. Nancy, you want to say hi?
Just a quick hello to say I'm happy to second chair. So both Ian and I represent the School Energy Coalition along with our colleague David Walrath, but Ian is our trustee lead on this issue. So I will just chime in if there's anything I can add, but Ian's going to be delivering the bulk of this to you. Pleasure to be
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I just wanted you to see Nancy. We both, again, as she says, work with Dave Walrath on this issue for the organization as well as others. You know, energy is a big issue, so we're doing a lot right now. So I just wanted to thank Nancy for doing this. And yeah, with that, I think I'll just get going. It sounds like we're able to just unmute ourselves and say things, which is great. So when that happens, please feel free to do that. I would appreciate it. It'll keep me from just rattling on, right? So don't have any hesitation about doing that. So with that, of course, what is our title here? A closer look at AB 841 and indoor air quality. And so obviously, if you are on this webinar, you're interested in the issue. Just to kind of start off at the 30,000 foot level, school health and school safety clearly have become primary issues in education. All the you know where we work in school facilities in particular, though, and as we've seen, and that's alluding to, of course, the significant focus on HVAC systems, indoor air quality, air circulation, all those pieces. Frankly, it's not just for M&O folks anymore and energy consultants. It's a much broader issue. You see it covered on the national news. You see it talked about on the local news. Very big issue. So I don't have to convince you, I think, of that. But wanted to start there because this is one of those issues that probably is not going away in importance. Basically, right? COVID-19 will, whenever it's official, at some point it will be history. But indoor air quality, healthy schools, as we'll get to, will continue to be a central focus of school facilities and M&O departments. So that's why, in a way, it's kind of as we've seen, COVID-19 has really shown how significant adequate and well-maintained HVAC systems are for the obvious, for the attempt to mitigate COVID-19 so we can reopen schools. But also beyond that, we've seen last couple of years, wildfires, that issue, managing that kind of indoor air quality issue. That's separate from COVID-19 and will likely, unfortunately, be an issue, a variable going forward for schools. Also, just got off a call with some folks in the Central Valley dealing with 841, and one of their issues is poor ambient air quality. Sometimes their air quality outside is not good enough to pass, and then so circulation's not really going to help you too much, right? So these are all issues beyond COVID-19. I have another one written down here. Proximity to freeway interchanges, things like that. This is the real broad view that indoor air quality is an issue that's here to stay. So it's I would say it's appropriate that there's so much focus on it lately. A couple of more bullet points, things to understand as we dive kind of deeper and get more specific into the issue, as well as certainly 841. Something to understand is the thermal aspects versus the ventilation or airflow aspects of HVAC units. Up to now, basically, the real focus is on, do these things heat appropriately? Do they cool appropriately, right? Are they energy efficient? Great, and we're sneaking up on that as well in terms of state requirements and so on, but really it was the thermal aspects. Does it work? Cool and heat. But now, in addition to that, there's a lot of focus, of course, on airflow, ventilation. And so that's what you're seeing, more focus, more state requirements, more specificity, things like that. It helps you to understand that there's more of a focus now on ventilation. So you'll hear airflow requirements and all those pieces. I'm sure everyone on this has been through that with the MERV 13s and so on. So thermal still important, but that was the focus before, but now ventilation and airflow, and that's really what we're talking about here. And of course, related to that is the academic research. That has been particularly strong in indoor air quality. And so in California in particular, and in the next slide, we'll get into those. But there was a few key pieces of academic research that really shined the light on this issue even before COVID-19. And so there's a body of research out there, and it's really that research informed AB 841. So, I mean, that really gave it the justification to get it passed. And also a lot of what's in AB 841 is in that academic research. So it's not just something that's generally important. There's a direct nexus between that research and now state policy. So important to understand that as well. This last one is kind of, I'm going to take a drink here. This last one is just kind of, again, it's more general, but to remind you that healthy learning environments, just that concept, more than just classrooms now. That's if you see the Department of Education calls itself the Department of Healthy Learning Environments, things like that. And what does that mean? It means air, which we're talking about here. It means water, which is also part of AB 841. Everyone's focusing on the ventilation piece, so that funding, and as they should, but there's also funding in there to upgrade plumbing fixtures and so on, to help mitigate lead and for clean drinking water. Also energy, if really this AB 841 is an energy bill. If you notice the title, it's called the Energy Stimulus Bill. So those, and then also resiliency, related to energy efficiency on the energy side, but also a very important wildfires, for instance. Are your facilities resilient for that kind of challenge, basically? So next slide, please. All right, and here's a little bit what I was referring to, and that will get us to AB 841. Research and state policy. So in 2004, some of you may remember there was the Air Resources Board did a study of indoor air quality in portable classrooms. And that was kind of the first significant state study of indoor air quality. And it's a significant piece. There's a lot of takeaways to it worth reading. But the kind of the takeaway, the lesson learned, M&O is key for indoor air quality. That shouldn't surprise any of you, but at that time it was like, wow, I really, it was kind of like a big deal to some folks. But that was really the takeaway. Changing your filters, all the things that you're all doing now, there was some in realities that wasn't being done sufficiently all over the state. And so it shines some light on that. And that's what the Cash Maintenance Network, some of you know me from Cash and the Cash Maintenance Network and maintenance issues. That's why we've been on this issue for that organization really since 2004. So speeding up a little bit, 2019, the UC Davis did a study on HVAC systems in new classrooms. So that is significant, right? It's the old stock versus brand new ones. But of course, what was the lesson learned or the takeaway? M&O is key for indoor air quality. And so that was reiterated again. And so we're glad for that. That helps us now make the case as for, and the last bullet point, AB 841. So that, as you can see, that's basically kind of a couple of 2 years worth of policy history to get us to this bill. So you've all heard of it, AB 841 by Assemblyman Ting, and it's essentially a funding program for to improve indoor air quality. by improving HVAC systems, as well as I referred to a water component as well. And about 2/3 of the funding will go to the air piece, about 1/3 will go to the water piece. So next slide, please. So what is the status of it? You know, that's the most important piece. Well, I'll skip to that one. It's what is that? The third bullet point there. It was supposed to be open and ready for business May 1. There were some legitimate last minute concerns. Some of them that us at the School Energy Coalition and the Coalition for Adequate Housing brought up, focused on some of the, we would say, confusion around the school procurement process, using a lot of concepts that were not familiar to schools and not really part of that. So there's an effort to improve that, to make sure that all these issues are addressed before the program is officially open. That said, it should be next week or the week after that, in early June, something like that. I will say last week I gave a presentation and said this week. So you can take that as you will, but it by law needs to be open and running pretty soon. I will say I checked just before I got on here, and it's still saying no. The CEC is working on the online infrastructure to do it. So I'm sure that's true, but I also know that there's continuing policy issues that they're trying to iron out before the program is opened up. But I should have started at the first bullet point. The California Energy Commission, that's the agency that is developing the guidelines for this program and will administer it. In other words, that's who you're going to apply to for the funding. We all know it as AB 841, but as it goes forward from a CEC perspective, it's called the School Energy Efficiency Stimulus Program. Once again, the emphasis on energy. The SEAS program, that's how it's known. But I'm doing kind of a slash and referring it to both, because a lot of folks in our industry know it as AB 841. But the official school or California Energy Commission program is the SEAS program. So try to get that in your brain as soon as possible. I'm still working on it. I would say the best way to get this information is the minute it comes out. I'll be doing the same thing, is to sign up, of course, for their listserv. Just Google SEAS and CEC and it'll get you right there. And so that'll be the first place that they will drop the official information as to when the program is actually open. So it's coming soon. You know, the check's in the mail, but no, it really needs to be open pretty soon. So, and the other piece, of course, is just to emphasize the School Energy Coalition and CASH did a lot of work kind of on the front end of this implementation process. Pretty much as soon as the bill was approved by the legislature and signed by the governor, we and a few other stakeholders started meeting with the sponsors of the bill, which is the California Building Trades, and kind of anticipating some of the issues, implementation issues that we wanted to see, because really a program this complicated should really be take about a year, 8 months or something like this. And they're trying to get the train on the tracks in 2 months. So it's not an excuse, but it's a real thing. It's a little bit too much work and not enough time. But also they're concentrating on just one piece. It's a 3-year program. So there's opportunities for program improvement as we go forward, and to address probably some of the issues that you have, and certainly some of the ones that we as advocates have with the program to the extent we know it. So yes, we've submitted letters, we've done testimony, and then probably most productively, we've had some one-on-one virtual meetings with the folks that are writing the program to bring up some of these issues from the school perspective that we want to make sure that don't hinder folks from applying or slow the program down. So that's kind of where we are there. Next slide, please.
And really quick,
Sure.
this says, is there, according to legislation, like a hard date on when it needs to be up and running? I know that The CEC has gone back and forth with getting the guidelines approved, but is there a hard date of when it absolutely must be open?
Well, yes, it was May 1. Excuse me, and I'm not being facetious. Yeah, it was supposed to be done internally, CEC internally by April 1, so they could ramp up and go hot on May 1. But that's what I was basically saying is it's lagging because of some probably legitimate technical issues, and yeah, they're kind of drinking out of a fire hose in terms of some of issues that they haven't anticipated. An issue I'm going to talk about later, CO2 monitors, that threw them off a little bit as well. And I'll talk about that, not separately, but kind of apart from this, because it's kind of its own thing. But that's just an example of, whoa, we don't know quite what to do with that. DSA got involved. So normally as an advocate, I would be beating up on the state agency here because of, go faster and so on. But
Will that affect?
if I'm to be honest, I really am. I can kind of see it. And once they started working with us, I can see they really are trying to do their best. So I'm not trying to make an excuse for them, but yeah, if it goes 2 months or something, it's going to be problematic, but this thing should be available pretty quick.
And you don't foresee that affecting the funding at all, even though it's going past the dates?
No, definitely not. No, it won't. And that's part of this, the 500 to 600 million, that's over 3 years, basically averaging about 200 million a year. That's not exact, because remember, these funds are a little bit different than some other funds, without geeking out on this too much. These are ratepayer funds, right? Anticipated ratepayer funds, not just a pot of funding sitting in the general fund that you can go for programs. That would certainly have been better. But to get this much funding this quick during COVID, this really was the best approach. And so the funding is secure. Yeah, it is. It's programmatic stuff. So I kind of wouldn't half believe that either if someone told me that, but that really appears to be the case. Go ahead, Nancy.
Sorry to interrupt. And you started hitting on it. I just wanted to make sure for folks who are not in the weeds on this stuff, energy geeks like us, I suppose, that it was just clear that the implementation timeline on this bill, which was effectively 5 months, is extraordinarily short for any government program. Typically, they would get at least a year, usually more. They'd get a year just to develop the the regulations to implement the program, and then maybe another 6 months to get it off the ground. So the fact that the legislature and the governor were asking them to do this in 5 months, obviously we appreciate, but it was a tall order. And we certainly saw evidence that they were trying to meet that guideline. So far be it from me to defend a state agency. It's not usually what I'm doing, but I just wanted to share that context that when it became apparent that they were not going to meet that May 1st deadline, it was after a lot of conversations with folks like School Energy Coalition and other stakeholders, in which they realized that there were some major factors that could affect the success or failure of the program that they just hadn't properly dealt with yet in their proposed regulations. So, it wasn't for lack of trying.
Oh, no. We appreciate it, because that first draft of guidelines was pretty, pretty, intense. So just wanted to clarify that.
And we appreciate, we know that's the question everyone is asking. I get it. Are the funds secure after all this policy talk or whatever? That we have a high level of confidence on. It's the rest of it. Related to this, I just saw something go by. Someone asked a question: what is ratepayer funds? Basically, these are utility funds. That's why they can't be spent outside of. I have it down here somewhere. They can't be spent outside of let's say it's the Pacific Gas and Electric. The funding can't be spent outside of that area. So there's some complications to this program, which I'm about to get in. But that's a very good question. Ratepayer funds. That's because, again, these are utility funds paid by us, basically, and so they're allocated yearly and projected out. That's why it's not exact. So that's the first piece. That's the funding. Another that second bullet point is very important. This goes to the the focus of the program, the scope and scale of it. The focus of this program, AB 841, the SEAS program, is assessment, filters, minor repairs, and installation of CO2 monitors. Now, we know what those assessments are going to show. We have old systems and they need to be replaced, and a lot of people have a lot of them to be replaced. And so, of course, the School Energy Coalition, others said, hey, we want to be able to use this funding for also, in addition to these, for making upgrades. But the reality is, the way the bill is written, you're not going to be able to do that unless they open up the funding for those purposes in the next couple of years. And they're being very focused on that because that is what the requirements, the way the bill was designed, basically. So that's very important to understand. Now, so some of the districts are asking, well, so are we supposed to just, assess our systems and then there's no money for them? That's a very, very valid question. In a way, that's the number one question. That's why, and we've talked a little bit about it here, but if you've seen any Coalition for Adequate School Housing our webinars or SEC webinars, we're talking about the federal funding a lot. Nancy and I just did one this morning talking about the federal funding that can be used for a fair amount of things, but ventilation in particular. That, I would suggest to you, is the place where you're going to want to look to make the larger high dollar system upgrades. This one is more focused. Now, what does that exactly mean? Well, that's why they're focusing on the guidelines right now. Some of those issues are why the guidelines are not out right now. But that's an important distinction to understand. The other one, I think I covered that, is it's a 3-year program. Right now, we're trying to get the first round. We're just trying to get the train on the tracks. There is opportunities to maybe do things going forward to improve the program. But again, limited to the service area, the utility service area. That's the real name. I should have put that in there. Again, the funding can't go outside that. And also, there's a disadvantaged communities cut also, that where it's trying to focus on these two things. And those two things are being defined in the CEC guidelines. Otherwise, I would have more information for you on that. Rest assured, there's a lot of questions from school districts, making sure that the CEC is very specific about those things. And so when you do, you're kind of looking out at this program, saying, will this work for me? That's kind of those are the first hoops you want to take a look at. Am I in the service area to get this funding here in this round, at least? And which are my schools, or what is a qualifying what is it here? What qualifies as a disadvantaged community? So that's that's like the first cut to understand. Another piece to understand is the requirement to use TAB certified technicians to do these assessments. And in some cases, the work and so on. And that's, although those are some of the things that the CEC is looking at in their guidelines, some of those issues. Can a consultant do both of those? That's their issue. But that's a significant issue. Some of the M&O folks tell me, hey, that's going to raise the cost. In some cases, we don't know how much. We did some projections. Some of the projections look pretty high. We have seen some unofficial kind of folks that have already done it, not quite as high as they thought, but there's no doubt that it's an issue, right? It could add cost to the program. And so that's something you want to take a look at, as well as the availability of these TAB certified technicians to do it, right? Maybe in the Los Angeles area, maybe in other metropolitan areas, it's more likely that they'll be available, but maybe in your Alpine County, maybe in your Indio, maybe they're not as available. So that's something to take a look at. The trades are aware of that, and that's something that we're working on them, trying to encourage them to, how can we help with the supply of these, since it's a requirement. So There's that. The second to the last bullet point is just kind of more general, but it's kind of a summary of or kind of a framing of how to look at this AB 841 program. Great, I want to get some new money for it, but we have old systems and now we're applying some new requirements. So that is a legitimate cause for not look at the program, but to say, will this work for us? The CEC didn't even realize, and it came up in testimony, some folks don't even have existing centralized HVAC systems. Some folks in the Bay Area, because of their weather, their climate, some folks just don't have it because they haven't been able to afford it. So what do we do in that case? So those are some of the issues that the CEC is wrangling with. And I mentioned finally the school procurement process. That's really where the rubber meets the road on this for AB 841 projects, and that's why there's such focus by SEC, by CASH, by other stakeholders with the CEC on the issues, because there's no doubt once the program gets going, there'll be some things to fix and improve, but we just want to make sure it didn't go sideways right from the jump. So that's why there's so much focus on it, because we knew, as Nancy said, 5 months is really not enough time to do that. She described the typical process perfectly, usually about a year to develop it and about a half a year to do the public outreach and transparency pieces. And so this was all done at once. So next, was there a question?
Yeah, sorry,
Yes.
me again.
No, it's all right.
So, with the AB 841 not really going to be able to cover the replacement of those old systems, is there going to be a sort of way to exempt those older units from the initial assessment? That way those funds can be better utilized on maintaining or upgrading the units that are actually going to be able to be fixed under this program?
There's not a mechanism like that, but the issue that you bring up, again, with the old systems, in many ways, it's exactly what I'm referring to. So no, there's not an exemption, but we've been arguing and highlighting this very issue and here's our best argument, frankly. If you make this too hard and if it's too onerous from all these new requirements and so on, schools just aren't going to apply for it, especially with all this new federal money floating around, which I know no one knows exactly and so on, but it's a lot of funding. And it can also be used for this. So, so the answer is no. But it goes to the very question of the old systems. That's the concern. So, so anyway, yeah, all these issues. Next slide, please. Let's see how we're doing on time. Oh, yeah, we're still doing okay. Okay, so you heard me mention one of the the 4 issues: the assessment, the filters. And when I say filters, I can't believe I even said it. I guess I'm assuming an educated audience here, but of course, MERV 13 filters. That is what is required in AB 841. Although if you look closely, it basically says, in so many words, do the best you can. We've heard a lot of folks that they have old systems, and the reality is they know for a fact that putting more than an 11 won't do it. There's ways to do that. They just want basically for you to take it seriously. Now, I will say, the folks that do the academic research and some of the other third-party folks do think it's a lot easier to just pop in a MERV 13 filter and you're good to go, right? Well, just do it. And that's one of the things we're doing, is that all of our folks want to do that, and even more if we can. The HEPA 16, if you could afford it and do it, but it's not that easy every time, especially on old systems. So this also goes to old systems, and then minor repairs, right? And we'll see what minor repairs means. I, as an advocate, would like to open the aperture on that as much as possible, right? I mean, so you're not going to be able to do all your systems, but we need to be able to hopefully open that up to do real repairs, right? Some things that are more significant. But this is all to say, and then CO2 monitors. Those other three pieces are kind of things that are done in various levels, but CO2 monitors are new, the requirement for. And so it's basically a kind of an intuitive argument. You can't fix what you can't measure. Hard to argue against that. But of course, as advocates, the School Energy Coalition, others, basically what we want to make sure that there's enough funding and that it works within the programs and our existing systems, because it's a big change, and we're trying to communicate that it's a big change to them. So just quickly, there was a little confusion about this issue earlier in the year. Basically, the Division of State Architect, this is the control agency over this issue, issued an IR, kind of a missive. Basically, this is how our regulations will work in this issue, that basically required CO2 monitors on all classrooms universally. Needless to say, that kind of freaked everybody out. We kind of did a pushback on that. Long story short, there was a clarification. And so now it's currently only required on AB 841 projects. So that's why I have this DSA IR BU 21-01. Sorry for the technicalities, but if you go to that, that's the, what is it here? The plan submittal requirements for schools participating in the SEAS program. So thankfully, it's been narrowed to just these projects. Within that, kind of a sub issue is wired monitors versus plug-in monitors. Obviously, plug-in monitors are easier to retrofit, right? There's no doubt about that. They're going to be somewhat cheaper, and DSA is more flexible on that for 841 projects. We talked to the state architect about that because they understand. We want to make sure that nothing slows these projects down. There's room. There's definitely some room to work in there. The wired monitors obviously are more expensive, but really, that's where this whole effort is heading. What I'm referring to is the California Green Code. Already that they require, and no one knows it since I think 2005, that there be CO2 monitors in all classrooms, but it hasn't never really been activated. It hasn't been enforced. Well, now basically slowly, and it's hitting now, it's starting to be enforced. So the Division of State Architect has recommended to the Building Standards Commission for the next code adoption that the monitors will be required in all classrooms. So we don't know when, we don't know what that looks like. It's not going to come down right away. But that is to say that it's been clarified for now, but to the extent possible, when you plan your projects, think about how that's going to work, because at some point it's going to be a requirement. And of course, that's why the wired monitors are superior. They because you can basically hook them into central control systems for energy efficiency, for non-centralized monitoring. One of the gentlemen that works with me in Cash, he monitors his whole classroom from his iPhone. He's a little bit ahead of the curve, but he's able to do that because all his systems are wired. Now, already new construction requires monitors, requires CO2 monitors. But and as we talked about, this whole stock of other ones don't yet, but will soon. I would say probably as early as next year, something like that. Are there questions about that? No. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of focus a little bit on CO2 monitors, because it's certainly a part of AB 841, but it's kind of an issue unto itself. If there was no AB 841, the Cal Green Code piece and the Building Standards Commission building code adoption would be moving forward anyway. And that's kind of how it got confused, but it's happening anyway to some extent. So it's something to contemplate as you're doing these projects, whether it's AB 841 or whether it's federal money, whether it's state money, right? It looks like there's going to be some for that. or hopefully we can use some of this new maybe revision money for it. We're looking into that, but that's all to say that when you do that, be sure and think about how you're going to handle CO2 monitors, because
Ian,
eventually it's going to be required. Go ahead.
So the plug-in ones would be sufficient to meet this standard, is what I heard.
That's right. And I believe, I won't read it here, but I believe that says that in this in the DSA BU 2101. And we talked to her about that. Yes, that's right.
What about fresh air and ventilation systems that have them installed? So if I'm installing a fresh air ventilator to bring in more fresh air, would that be sufficient, or could that go in? Could we use the funding for fresh air ventilators that have CO2s installed in them?
Oh, I would. That, of course, you would is a particular CEC question, but I will say I can't imagine that not being well within what would be funded. In fact, that seems like kind of a nice kind of a 2-for-1. So yeah, I mean, again, that's just me talking, but I would imagine that would apply. But I would go directly to the CEC when as soon as the program guidelines go out. Just go directly to them, call them, or ask that question. Yeah. Cool. Yep. Next slide. I think we've got a few minutes left. Good. Well, recommendations. What do you recommend here? This stuff is pretty general, guys. I don't know exactly what to tell you. Go for all the money, right? But serious about this one, become familiar with the C's guidelines, right? Obviously, because to see if you can get funding for it. That's pretty obvious. Do the kind of risk reward given the challenges and the opportunities that the program presents. But more broadly, this whole effort with developing this program, it's really setting the policy for indoor air quality in schools in many ways for California. It doesn't mean it's the only thing. So it's important to be familiar with the program just in general. So maybe on the first round, you don't qualify for the disadvantaged schools piece, or only some of them do, or however that works, or you're not in the service area for this round or whatever. But so you're not like immediately in it. But it's important to just kind of keep your ear to the ground at minimum, because, right? I mean, more funding could be dumped into this for just an idea, something like this. Again, it's a 3-year program. Programs, they can be improved once it's running a year. Things like that. Maybe we can open it up to larger system replacements, even though there's the federal money. That's not, things like that. So become familiar with those guidelines. Again, the best way to do it is just sign up. There's for their listserv, not much more to do, unless you want to call them directly, which you certainly can. Some of our folks have. So there's that. Obviously, and you've been hearing me talk about 40 minutes about the federal and state programs that are available for this. The ESSER funding, you've heard of this, ESSER 1, 2, and 3, AB 86, the learning loss and mitigation. Remember, there's funding in that as well for ventilation. And then and there's other pieces. The Biden administration's infrastructure proposal, that might even have some things in it. So there is a lot of funding out there available. Now, everyone's looking for one program, right? Where you can just go assess, get the money, fix it. And of course, that's what we want. It doesn't exist, right? You have to, in a way, cobble it together. AB 841, we've talked about kind of what that focuses on. But then the federal funding, the state funding, not only the new state funding, but routine restricted. Those things, Prop 98 is on the rise, likely to get a bump in that. So that's certainly subject to the LCAP internal politics and so on. But in terms of funding, there's a lot of funding. In a way, you got to go out and get that. And it's comprehensive school ventilation plan. Good to have one of those. That's not an official thing. That's just something I made up. But basically what that is the folks that are real active that I know have basically done that. And how does that work with your existing kind of processes, the Williams inspections, the FIT, facility inspection tool, the LCAP, the routine restricted funding, all of those things to kind of look at all these pieces, look at ventilation basically in that context. As you know, you do your FIT inspections. One of the 8 building systems is HVAC, but now it was pretty basic in a way, talking about the thermal aspects as I kind of enumerated them before. Does it work? Is it energy efficient? Does your damper work? Stuff like that. Now you have to have a tab technician, check, test and balance the flow rates and so on. So it's getting more sophisticated. Best to be prepared. So basically that's all. Is that all I had? Yeah. Last slide. That's all I had. I kind of left some, well, I'm a fast talker, but also I wanted to leave some time. One, I'm sorry, I forgot about this one. I think we've talked about a lot of these things, but these are kind of just generally key resources for you. The federal and state programs I just talked about for ventilation. The California Energy Commission, obviously, the DSA for CO2 monitors, energy efficiency, acceptance testing, right? Some of you probably know that. We haven't even talked about that. That's required as well once you get the systems in to make sure commissioning basically, or near commissioning to make sure that they're running. So DSA is a key agency beyond AB 841 for these issues. Cash. We also work with CASBO, the School Business Officials, School Energy Coalition, that's us. And then one guy I just want to kind of highlight, he works with Cash, but he's the most knowledgeable person I know with schools and ventilation and so on. And that's Roger Silveria from Eastside Union High School District. Just wanted to kind of single him out. Great resource. He's already doing this thing. He already has his blog. He's kind of a IAQ and schools nerd in a good way, so he's really into it. So those are the kind of some good resources for you as we're going forward. Certainly, Nancy and I are, as much as anything, we wanted to introduce ourselves to you. We know that we're really pleased, and then I'll stop talking, to talk to the small school districts, because a lot of times in these big programs, those are the folks we know that kind of don't get focused on, that's why I mentioned that issue of, remember, tab certified technicians. Well, what about in Alpine County? Can you even get them? If things like that. So we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. We are resources. These pieces on the screen are also resources, and you can always talk to us, contact us when you have questions going forward. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions with our final time.
Hey, Ian, this is Tim Taylor from SSDA, and thank you so much. That was really, really good. A little overwhelming, which is good.
I know.
I actually think one of the questions I was going to ask on that ventilation plan. It would be nice to see. I'm sure Elk Grove's got their own ventilation director. There's so many people down there, Nance. But I think your guy from East Side, if we could see a sample like that, especially where you have the funding sources, because people, need to realize they need to spend their federal funding, state funding, this funding. That's a complicated beast for smalls. So I don't know if anyone has a ventilation plan with those potential funding sources. I think that would be extremely helpful. And I know the feds look like they're putting out $100 billion more in school facilities too, on top of all this stuff coming. So this has been
exactly.
I have a question for you though on the procurement, because there's some people who aren't ethical selling these things, right? We've had some calls from districts that got kind of bamboozled and the wrong systems went in. Is the state or is Cash going to help with training on procurement, or is there going to be a statewide list you can pull off? Because man, all of a sudden everybody's become an expert in this area. They went from like selling textbooks to selling ventilation systems.
Yeah, let me answer that question first. Yes, we're going to do training on that for sure. I mean, for the very issue that you're talking about, I've been working with some county offices, education, and also M&O folks, and it's kind of a running joke even before we get going. Well, who's called you today? How many emails today did you get on the new super air thing, the super light, the super thing you can roll around, you can put it on your back, it can make you fly. Yeah, I know. No, I mean, it's become a real, I'm joking and being flippant about it, but
true.
they were telling me it's actually kind of a workload issue. There's so much. So your point is very well taken. That's why we've reached out to you. That's why we've kind of, honestly, we slowed the CEC up a little bit over these procurement issues. That's why. I mean, there's other issues too, but we, right. And so we are rushing to do that. We are trying to have them put information out, not just us, right? But certainly we will, the School Energy Coalition, and others, because we know, and that's another one, if we want to work together, you know, again, and do another one of these that's now focused more in the weeds on that, we can absolutely do that. We would be happy to do that, or facilitate, or whatever we need. Get a Roger Silveric to come in, and honestly, I was going to have him come. He couldn't do it today, and there's so much to kind of introduce. I didn't want to go off there, but I definitely want to get more into the weeds on those procurement issues, because that's where the rubber meets the road. You know that, and we know that too. And they're not going to all be out there.
His ventilation plan, I think that would help out the average person. And Nancy, I just have one more question. I know in Prop 13, we had a carve out for smalls, right? We had the 800 million carve out. Is this first come, first serve, competitive only, or, you know, how can, again, we don't have, you know, these superintendents on here, they are the facilities department. Is it going to be first come, first serve, and is it going to be competitive based, and does that put us against the 8 ball?
I'll ask Ian to make sure I'm right, but I believe it's first come, first serve.
Yes, yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
The disadvantaged, is that a separate pot, or is it just additional eligibility? Ian, that's priority for the disadvantaged.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, because you could say it's first come, first serve, but the disadvantage kind of takes away from that, as does the service areas. So after you get past that, it is. But I think the point is well taken. You know, there's only so many, 600 million is not that much. So for the smalls.
So no set aside, if you will, for smalls or rurals in this one, Tim.
Okay, I'm gonna get Kathy McBride. I'm gonna get on her about that.
No, that's, and your other question kind of relates to this. Hey, is there a 2 or even an 8-page matrix that shows us kind of like that, basically the elements of a ventilation plan? We don't have one that I could just send to you, but we're developing it. That's, you know, we're trying to go through the programs and what pertains to us, because just school money doesn't help, right? And just general operation does, you know, we got to get, so that's what Nancy and I, Dave Walrath, others in our shop, in other organizations are doing, are getting that. So believe me, we're trying to get that single document. We're going more and more. Just a small pitch, look for our SEC and cash workshops and so on. A lot of them are free and stuff like that, and we're doing this, you know, Tom Duffy, we're focusing a lot of these issues, but the biggest one is, all right, what is the current status of our matrix on the federal programs? And not just the federal though, now we have more state ones. It's been complicated in a good way, right? But again, that's all to say your point is well taken, and we can certainly work with the smalls on that, because there isn't a carve out. There isn't, I think training is the thing. That's even for cash, the big giant, right? That we're doing the same thing, because there's not, there isn't that for this group or that group, but particularly smalls. That's why we kind of really did jump at the chance to talk, and we're glad there's interest, because you know, SSDA was in our shop for quite a few years.
Oh yeah,
I kind of grew up with SSDA. It just kind of, I get the issues just by osmosis. So that's why when you were talking, I'm going, oh yeah, this is like old home week. But I think it's good to keep doing that, and not just one maybe workshop, maybe some series, because it's not, again, we're trying to get people away from just a AB 841 focus. AB 841 is real important. We're talking about it here for an hour. You heard me talk about it, but it's a real important source, but there's other pieces. And that's important for the larger system replacements. We know what those assessments really are going to show. They have to be done. It's good. It can be helpful, but we know really what they're going to show, right? It's a lot of this stuff needs to be replaced and upgraded significantly. So again, trying to cobble all this together, and that's what we're trying to do with the training, basically, is unofficially or just create the one program that we all need with training, this or that, and information. It's imperfect, but it really is genuinely, I think, the best way to approach it at this point.
Well, hey, we really appreciate your guys' time today, and you'll be on my speed dial, you two, because once that email comes out, we'll be looking for you. We know where you live, Ian. We know where Walnut lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, and absolutely, we'll do that. Keep us on. Don't hesitate to reach out to us on these issues, just in terms of personally for questions or so on, or of course, when we just getting the right time to do some workshops. We're doing the same thing with SEC and cash. When is it? But one focused on smalls.
Perfect.
Maybe even not Roger, because he's from a kind of a big metropolitan area. We know other folks that have done it successfully in a less populated area, or that's all to say whatever's appropriate for this membership. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
Pleasure to be with you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, are there any other questions?
No. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone appreciates it here.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot, and don't be a stranger. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
We will.
All right.